You may live here, where the days are very hot and dry, and there's very little rain, and the nights can dip down to below 30 degrees, and it can get very cold. Or you may live here, where the seasons change. Sometimes there's snow, sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's hot, and sometimes it's cold. Or you may live here, where water surrounds you for miles and miles. No air, just liquid. You may even live in the land of the midnight sun, where parts of the year have no darkness. Other parts of the year are complete darkness. It's cold, ice surrounds you, the air is dry. Or this might be the place where you inhabit. Lots and lots of vegetation, lots and lots of rain, and humid air all year long. These are just some of the many biomes that exist on our Earth. Biomes are large naturally occurring communities of flora, which are plants, and fauna, which are animals. Within each of these biomes are habitats. All of these habitats have similar characteristics, including the plants and animals that live in them, the weather or climate that occurs in them, and the landscapes that exist in them. Living in any one of these environments can present challenges to both the plants and animals that live in them. These plants and animals must overcome these challenges in certain ways so that they are able to survive. Overcoming these challenges is called adaptation. Adaptations are traits that an animal has that allows them to survive. The goal of an animal is to pass on its genes to the next generation. So when an animal adapts by chance, remember they adapt by chance, not by choice, then they are able to survive in their biome, in their habitat, and then they reproduce and they pass on the traits that they have that allowed for survival on to the next generation. So ultimately, adaptation leads to an animal's survival, and then the traits that lead to survival live on through reproduction. So when animals reproduce, they have babies, their traits are passed on to the next generation of animals, and then they live on throughout history. When we discuss adaptations, we discuss two types of adaptations that plants and animals can have to help them to survive. The first of these two adaptations is called behavioral adaptation. Behavioral adaptation is ways that organisms, both plants and animals, act that help them to survive in their environment. So it's not something that's specific about the animal's body necessarily or the plant's structure, but what it has to do with is the way they act. So it's an action. It's kind of like a verb that they do that helps them to survive. So some examples of behavioral adaptations include migration, hibernation, warning calls, mating dances, hunting in packs. When penguins huddle up in a group to stay warm, that's considered a behavioral adaptation. So there are many different types of behavioral adaptations that animals can have to help them to survive. While you're doing your research on both the sloth as well as when we start our research project on our Alaskan animal, you will see that some of your animals or some of these animals can have behavioral adaptations and do use behavioral adaptations to help them to survive. The second type of adaptation is called structural adaptation. I, however, like to refer to this as a physical adaptation. So it's an actual part of the animal's body. It might include their coloration that helps the animal to survive in its environment. So if it's a part of their body, this would be a physical or structural adaptation. So examples of these would include camouflage, mimicry, bent hind legs, sharp claws and teeth, like we talked about the eagle's talons, or if we take a look at the tiger's teeth here, any type of body structure that the animal has. So we're talking about snowshoes, and we will talk about snowshoes. That's a physical adaptation. An animal's coat, having blubber, those are all types of physical adaptations that animals can have to help ensure their survival. So let's take a look at this cheetah, for example. This cheetah has many adaptations that help it to survive in its habitat. This animal lives in the savanna of Africa. And so if we take a look at some of these adaptations, we will note how they help them survive. So first and foremost, the cheetah has eyes with tapetum that can reflect light into the retina to enhance night vision. So when you see an animal down in the ditch and you can see its eyes glowing, that's what we call the tapetum. And so that is an adaptation that allows animals to see at nighttime. It reflects light inside, kind of like a mirror, and back out to allow for night vision. Cheetahs would obviously need this to help them catch their prey, since they are predators. Remember, predators are animals that hunt other animals. It has a spotted coat for camouflage. So when you live in the plains of Africa, there's lots of dry grasses, and so the coloration of the cheetah allows it to kind of blend in with its habitat. You'll see that lots of Arctic animals use their coloration to help them camouflage in their environment. Whether you're a predator or prey, camouflage is a great adaptation. This is kind of a neat adaptation for the cheetah. It's its tail. Its tail helps to improve its balance. We all know that cheetahs are very fast, but while they're moving in a fast way and they have to shift and change directions quickly, they use that tail for balance. They have heavily muscled limbs. This can help it to run very fast, and it also helps them to pounce on their prey. Remember, they are predators. They need to catch prey to survive. It has expendable claws on each toe to help it hunt animals, and it makes them expert climbers so they can climb into trees as well. You might not have known that about the cheetah, but if it didn't have these expendable claws to help them do these things, then it probably wouldn't survive quite as well. And then finally, since it is a predator, it needs muscular jaws and sharp teeth to help it rip into the flesh of its prey. So these are all traits that cheetahs have that help it to survive. And then when it reproduces or mates with another cheetah, then these traits will get passed on to the next generation and the next generation. And if for some reason a cheetah were to develop some other adaptation that helps ensure its survival, that trait would pass on too. So it's all about, remember we said chance, the chance that these traits occur, and then the probability of their survival increasing, and the trait being passed on to the next generation. We sometimes forget, but plants can also have adaptations as well. Now, most of a plant's adaptations are going to be structural adaptations, part of the plant's structure itself. But that's not to say that some plants don't have behavioral adaptations, like moving towards the light source might be a behavioral adaptation. But for the cactus here, you will see that most of its adaptations are physical adaptations. So you'll notice that the cactus is very kind of a slim plant. This allows for a small surface area, which minimizes evaporation. Remember, the cactus wants to maintain and hold water inside because it doesn't rain a lot. And so in order for it to survive and live on in a desert climate where it's very hot and dry and there's little rain, it needs to maintain as much water as possible. So if it can prevent any evaporation by having such small surface area, then it will be able to survive for much longer. We talked about this one in class a little bit. Remember, it has spines instead of leaves. This helps prevent animals from coming and taking the water that it stores inside the cactus. So that's another adaptation. It has stems, which we can't see, those would be underground, that can store water as well, and a deep root system. So these roots run very deep where there's more water underground, They're also widespread, so they spread out, which allows to give it stability so it's able to stand up since it's kind of a tall and skinny structure. So remember, both plants and animals can have adaptations to help them survive in their habitat. I want you to take a look at this chart here. In this chart, there are many different adaptations. Some are physical adaptations and some are behavioral adaptations. Let's take like 30 seconds to just look over this and see if we can identify any physical adaptations or behavioral adaptations. If you want to pause the video for a little bit longer, you can, but I'm just going to identify some physical adaptations you might have found on the chart and some behavioral adaptations that you might have found. And then if you want to take some more time to kind of look through it and see if you can find any others, that's great. We're just going to go through a few right now, and then as we research, we're going to see tons more. So some of the physical adaptations that animals can have are bright colors. It's a part of their body. It's a physique type of characteristic. Canines for tearing meat. It's part of the animal's body. Deer antlers, blubber, sharp claws, webbed feet, a camel's hump, a kangaroo's pouch. These are all types of physical adaptations, structural adaptations, parts of the animal's body. Now, if we remember from the video earlier, behavioral adaptations involve behavior, actions, things that animals do. Physical adaptations, they can't really help it since it's a part of their body. Behavioral adaptations, they can. They're actions. So migration and hibernation, these are both actions that animals do. They would be considered behavioral. Hunting is a behavioral adaptation. Skunks spraying would be a behavioral adaptation. Elephants using their trunk to clean themselves. They also actually take dirt to protect themselves from the sun, and they put it on their bodies. Those are behavioral adaptations as well. Beavers building dams, squirrels storing nuts. So like I said, you can pause the video and you can take a look through these adaptations and try to find some more and sort some more physical and behavioral adaptations. I do have another assignment for you today, however, so I don't want you to spend all day working on this because I want you to spend part of your day working on something else. What I want you to do is some detective work. I want you to do a little bit of investigating. Our plan today was to investigate this guy. My favorite animal in this whole entire world, the sloth, is such a mysterious creature. Now, we already kind of looked at its habitat. We learned that it lives in the rainforest, and the rainforest presents many challenges to the animals that live there. It is very humid. It is very hot since it is close to the equator. There is a lot of vegetation. In fact, the trees are very tall. Now, we learned that the rainforest has many different parts. In fact, it has many layers. The sloth lives high up in the canopy, and so that can present some challenges to this animal as well. So what I would like you to do today is research our friend the sloth, and I would like you to write down 3 adaptations of the sloth that we can share in class. Then we are going to label these adaptations on an app called ThingLink. So 3 adaptations of the sloth. That means you're going to need to do some research on this animal. Please write these adaptations down on a sheet of paper and bring them to class with you. If you want to write down more, great. I know they're fascinating animals. So I'm sure you want to sit and research all day. But how do they live? How do they survive in such a harsh habitat, a harsh climate? Find those answers out and be ready to share them in class. Now, our writing assignment is actually going to involve adaptations as well. Most of us, with the exception of a few, have finished up our narrative memory twist project. That means we are going to be starting our next writing project. This project involves a research on an animal, and then we are going to apply our knowledge of adaptations to write an informational text. You all know this because we've discussed it in class. This week will be spent mostly investigating the adaptations, but I would like to choose our Arctic animal. So, I don't want you to start researching your animal today because we do it by random drawing. I don't want everyone doing the same animal. In fact, I only want one animal per class. So that means 2 people can do the polar bear, 2 people could do a puffin, 2 people could do a walrus, but only 1 per class. So what I would like you to do today is look for 3 or 4 Arctic animals that you would like to potentially write your book about. And then I want you to write those down on a piece of paper. You could even use your sloth paper. Put sloth facts or sloth adaptations on the front side, and then put your Arctic animals on the back. And the reason why I want you to have more than one is in case your first choice gets chosen or just gets taken before you're selected, then you have default or backup animals to choose from. So do some research, find some Arctic animals that you might be interested in, and pick 3 or 4 that interest you so that you're ready when choice day comes. So just to recap today, review what adaptations are, find some adaptations that the sloth has, 3 to be exact, to help it survive in its environment. And then I want you to research some Arctic animals that you can use to research for our next writing project. This should be enough to keep you busy for a little while. Nothing too strenuous today, but very important things that need to get done so we can continue to work on all of our projects that we have in class. Questions? Feel free to message me on Dojo.